iPhone with the N-word on the back, knowing customers will buy it anyway. And now for the delayed and utterly thoughtless romantic gesture that is The Onion Week in Review. Self-identified 9/11 truther Dennis Shaw told reporters Tuesday he's absolutely convinced the United States government has orchestrated an intricate plot to systematically destroy the last 11 years of his life. Shaw, who since 2001 has spent nearly every waking minute poring over footage of the World Trade Center attack and even handing out truther pamphlets every afternoon, says the government is behind the gradual collapse of his personal and professional life, adding that the conspiracy, quote, goes all the way to the top.
Before 2001, I'd see my friend Stephen Copley every couple of weeks, and now he won't even answer my calls. The government got to him too. Think about it. My coworkers, my wife, my friends, everyone calling me crazy after September 11th and wanting nothing to do with me. What are the chances of that?
This is the Onion News Network.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. Tired of the ever-inflating US dollar? You can live your life on Dash instead with some handy websites. BitRefill.com has been accepting Dash for years and has a ton of big-name retailers and brands including grocers, gas stations, phone refills, Amazon, and even prepaid MasterCards. Plus, many of their gift cards are available at a discount. But what about paying your bills? Spritz.finance can do that, and they can send dollars to your bank account in case you still need those for some reason. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol, and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at Dash.org. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit Dash.org to learn about Dash. Dash.org.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Haya. A full-scale war between Israel and Lebanon's Hezbollah must be averted. That's the warning from United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres. He called for an immediate de-escalation of tensions. Jody Jacobs is at the UN headquarters in New York.
Antonio Guterres says Lebanon cannot become another Gaza. Addressing reporters here, he warned that the risk of another conflict in the Middle East is real and must be avoided.
One rash move, one miscalculation could trigger a catastrophe that goes far beyond the border and, frankly, beyond imagination.
This week, there's been increasing rhetoric from both Israel and the leader of Hezbollah in Lebanon, coupled with constant gunfire between the two countries. The leader of Hezbollah claims it will not stop its attacks unless there is a ceasefire in Gaza, while Israel's foreign minister this week warning of a potential all-out war.
Russian President Vladimir Putin claims Russia will further develop its nuclear arsenal to preserve the global balance of power, and he pledged to supply the Russian army fighting in Ukraine with the latest weaponry and drones. He urged South Korea not to arm Kiev following Moscow's new security pact with the DPRK. Daria Bondarchuk reports from Moscow.
Speaking in the Kremlin in front of graduates of military, police and intelligence service academies, Vladimir Putin said Russia needs to further develop its nuclear triad, a reference to its land-based, sea-based and air-launched nuclear missiles. At the same time, he said Russia remains open to security talks with the United States, but they must be comprehensive and must include the subject of Ukraine.
In the US, New York City and Washington, D.C. are experiencing extreme heat, with temperatures set to reach the highest level of the summer so far. It's prompted officials to swing into action as the hot weather becomes a serious safety concern. Mitch McCann's been braving the outdoors.
A heat wave can be more than just uncomfortable. It can be deadly and life-threatening if you're not prepared. That's according to New York Mayor Eric Adams as the city activates its cooling plan for the first time this year. Temperatures in New York will exceed 90 degrees Fahrenheit or 32 degrees Celsius, which follows a week of already intense heat for America's northeast. New York's heat emergency plan involves opening cooling centres for people seeking shelter from the sun, but also includes resources for New York's homeless community to stay safe. Meanwhile, in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., this weekend could see temperatures exceed 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 37 degrees Celsius. And if the heat does reach those numbers, it will be the first time since 2016. Across the United States, over 100 million Americans are under heat advisories, watches and warnings through the weekend.
Heat waves have also hit Europe, India and Saudi Arabia, where more than 1,000 people have died during the annual Hajj pilgrimage.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
The latest episode of Free Talk Live continues with Hour 2 up next after the news, here at listen.freetalklive.com.
From a feature story news in Washington, I'm Benji Haya. A full-scale war between Israel and Lebanon's Hezbollah must be averted. That's the warning from United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres. He called for an immediate de-escalation of tensions. Jody Jacobs is at the UN headquarters in New York.
Antonio Guterres says Lebanon cannot become another Gaza. Addressing reporters here, he warned that the risk of another conflict in the Middle East is real and must be avoided.
One rash move, one miscalculation could trigger a catastrophe that goes far beyond the border and, frankly, beyond imagination.
This week, there's been increasing rhetoric from both Israel and the leader of Hezbollah in Lebanon, coupled with constant gunfire between the two countries. The leader of Hezbollah claims it will not stop its attacks unless there is a ceasefire in Gaza, while Israel's foreign minister this week warning of a potential all-out war.
Russian President Vladimir Putin claims Russia will further develop its nuclear arsenal to preserve the global balance of power, and he pledged to supply the Russian army fighting in Ukraine with the latest weaponry and drones. He urged South Korea not to arm Kiev following Moscow's new security pact with the DPRK. Daria Bondarchuk reports from Moscow.
Speaking in the Kremlin in front of graduates of military police and intelligence service academies, Vladimir Putin said Russia needs to further develop its nuclear triad, a reference to its land-based, sea-based and air-launched nuclear missiles. At the same time, he said Russia remains open to security talks with the United States, but they must be comprehensive and must include the subject of Ukraine.
In the US, New York City and Washington, D.C. are experiencing extreme heat, with temperatures set to reach the highest level of the summer so far. It's prompted officials to swing into action as the hot weather becomes a serious safety concern. Mitch McCann's been braving the outdoors.
A heat wave can be more than just uncomfortable. It can be deadly and life-threatening if you're not prepared. That's according to New York Mayor Eric Adams as the city activates its cooling plan for the first time this year. Temperatures in New York will exceed 90 degrees Fahrenheit or 32 degrees Celsius, which follows a week of already intense heat for America's northeast. New York's heat emergency plan involves opening cooling centres for people seeking shelter from the sun, but also includes resources for New York's homeless community to stay safe. Meanwhile, in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., this weekend could see temperatures exceed 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 37 degrees Celsius. And if the heat does reach those numbers, it will be the first time since 2016. Across the United States, over 100 million Americans are under heat advisories, watches and warnings through the weekend.
Heat waves have also hit Europe, India and Saudi Arabia, where more than 1,000 people have died during the annual Hajj pilgrimage.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, what explains the collapse in support that opinion polls in the UK are indicating for the country's governing Conservative Party? In the latest BMG research poll for the iPaper, support for Rishi Sunak's party has tumbled to just 19%, compared to 42% for the opposition Labour Party. There are still 2 weeks to go in the UK's general election, so obituaries for the party of Winston Churchill and Margaret Thatcher are premature. But Andrew Neil, chairman of The Spectator, is offering one nonetheless.
One of the remarkable things of Brexit, whether you are for or against it, it's broken the Tory party. The Brexiteers won, the majority were Conservative, but getting it, doing it, living with it afterwards has broken them. It's exhausted them. It's taken away all their bandwidth. They had no time. And then, of course, the pandemic came along and that made it doubly difficult. But it's a bit like the Corn Laws in the 1840s. The repeal of the Corn Laws destroyed that Conservative Party as we knew it, and a new one had to rise from the ashes. Brexit has destroyed the Conservative Party as we've known it.
He spoke to Spectator TV. Nipping at the Conservatives' heels in the polls is Reform UK, the party now led by one of the principal architects of Brexit, Nigel Farage. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Our top story again, a full-scale war between Israel and Lebanon's Hezbollah must be averted. That's the warning from the United Nations Secretary-General, who is calling for an immediate de-escalation of tensions. Across the US East Coast, millions of Americans are experiencing extreme heat, with temperatures reaching the highest levels of the summer so far. Heat waves have also hit Europe, India and Saudi Arabia, where more than 1,000 people have died during the annual Hajj pilgrimage. That's the latest feature story news. I'm Benji Haya in Washington.
A report finds it's not okay to just start talking to people you don't know, and a monstrosity is created in the Frito-Lay laboratory. This is the Onion Week in Review. Local newborn Nathan Jameson surprised the world earlier this morning by irrevocably losing all faith in humanity after just 6 days. Though he's not yet developed the capacity for speech, spokespeople for the 6-day-old baby have confirmed he already knows that humans cannot be trusted and that most people lack self-awareness about their own destructive tendencies.
While most people need around 30 or 40 years to truly understand that the vast majority of humanity is shallow and irredeemable, baby Nathan's convinced that he has seen all that he needs to see. People have been nice and even brought him toys and presents. But the fact is, Nathan knows they're all full of shit.
And in this week's science report, botanists discover trees are all slowly trying to strangle each other. In other news, a fun-loving turtle is all business when it comes to feeding time, and a partygoer rolls a couple of fat burritos to pass around.
This is the Onion News Network.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 13th through the 16th for the 8th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which has sold out in recent years. Fork Fest happens the weekend before the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 13th through the 16th. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest Forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there June 13th through the 16th. Forkfest.party.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Haya. A full-scale war between Israel and Lebanon's Hezbollah must be averted. That's the warning from United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres. He called for an immediate de-escalation of tensions. Jody Jacobs is at the UN headquarters in New York.
Antonio Guterres says Lebanon cannot become another Gaza. Addressing reporters here, he warned that the risk of another conflict in the Middle East is real and must be avoided.
One rash move, one miscalculation could trigger a catastrophe that goes far beyond the border and, frankly, beyond imagination.
This week, there's been increasing rhetoric from both Israel and the leader of Hezbollah in Lebanon, coupled with constant gunfire between the two countries. The leader of Hezbollah claims it will not stop its attacks unless there is a ceasefire in Gaza, while Israel's foreign minister this week warning of a potential all-out war.
Russian President Vladimir Putin claims Russia will further develop its nuclear arsenal to preserve the global balance of power, and he pledged to supply the Russian army fighting in Ukraine with the latest weaponry and drones. He urged South Korea not to arm Kiev following Moscow's new security pact with the DPRK. Daria Bondarchuk reports from Moscow.
Speaking in the Kremlin in front of graduates of military police and intelligence service academies, Vladimir Putin said Russia needs to further develop its nuclear triad, a reference to its land-based, sea-based and air-launched nuclear missiles. At the same time, he said Russia remains open to security talks with the United States, but they must be comprehensive and must include the subject of Ukraine.
In the US, New York City and Washington, D.C. are experiencing extreme heat, with temperatures set to reach the highest level of the summer so far. It's prompted officials to swing into action as the hot weather becomes a serious safety concern. Mitch McCann's been braving the outdoors.
A heat wave can be more than just uncomfortable. It can be deadly and life-threatening if you're not prepared. That's according to New York Mayor Eric Adams as the city activates its cooling plan for the first time this year. Temperatures in New York will exceed 90 degrees Fahrenheit or 32 degrees Celsius, which follows a week of already intense heat for America's northeast. New York's heat emergency plan involves opening cooling centres for people seeking shelter from the sun, but also includes resources for New York's homeless community to stay safe. Meanwhile, in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., this weekend could see temperatures exceed 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 37 degrees Celsius. And if the heat does reach those numbers, it will be the first time since 2016. Across the United States, over 100 million Americans are under heat advisories, watches and warnings through the weekend.
Heat waves have also hit Europe, India and Saudi Arabia, where more than 1,000 people have died during the annual Hajj pilgrimage.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
The latest episode of Free Talk Live continues with Hour 3 up next after the news here at listen.freetalklive.com. The Liberty Radio Network presents the latest episode of Free Talk Live, next after the news, here on LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Haya. A full-scale war between Israel and Lebanon's Hezbollah must be averted. That's the warning from United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres. He called for an immediate de-escalation of tensions. Jody Jacobs is at the UN headquarters in New York.
Antonio Guterres says Lebanon cannot become another Gaza. Addressing reporters here, he warned that the risk of another...
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Haya. A full-scale war between Israel and Lebanon's Hezbollah must be averted. That's the warning from United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres. He called for an immediate de-escalation of tensions. Jody Jacobs is at the UN headquarters in New York.
Antonio Guterres says Lebanon cannot become another Gaza. Addressing reporters here, he warned that the risk of another conflict in the Middle East is real and must be avoided.
One rash move, one miscalculation could trigger a catastrophe that goes far beyond the border and, frankly, beyond imagination.
This week, there's been increasing rhetoric from both Israel and the leader of Hezbollah in Lebanon, coupled with constant gunfire between the two countries. The leader of Hezbollah claims it will not stop its attacks unless there is a ceasefire in Gaza, while Israel's foreign minister this week warning of a potential all-out war.
Russian President Vladimir Putin claims Russia will further develop its nuclear arsenal to preserve the global balance of power, and he pledged to supply the Russian army fighting in Ukraine with the latest weaponry and drones. He urged South Korea not to arm Kiev following Moscow's new security pact with the DPRK. Daria Bondarchuk reports from Moscow.
Speaking in the Kremlin in front of graduates of military, police and intelligence service academies, Vladimir Putin said Russia needs to further develop its nuclear triad, a reference to its land-based, sea-based and air-launched nuclear missiles. At the same time, he said Russia remains open to security talks with the United States, but they must be comprehensive and must include the subject of Ukraine.
In the US, New York City and Washington, D.C. are experiencing extreme heat, with temperatures set to reach the highest level of the summer so far. It's prompted officials to swing into action as the hot weather becomes a serious safety concern. Mitch McCann's been braving the outdoors.
A heat wave can be more than just uncomfortable. It can be deadly and life-threatening if you're not prepared. That's according to New York Mayor Eric Adams as the city activates its cooling plan for the first time this year. Temperatures in New York will exceed 90 degrees Fahrenheit or 32 degrees Celsius, which follows a week of already intense heat for America's northeast. New York's heat emergency plan involves opening cooling centres for people seeking shelter from the sun, but also includes resources for New York's homeless community to stay safe. Meanwhile, in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., this weekend could see temperatures exceed 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 37 degrees Celsius. And if the heat does reach those numbers, it will be the first time since 2016. Across the United States, over 100 million Americans are under heat advisories, watches and warnings through the weekend.
Heat waves have also hit Europe, India and Saudi Arabia, where more than 1,000 people have died during the annual Hajj pilgrimage.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, what explains the collapse in support that opinion polls in the UK are indicating for the country's governing Conservative Party? In the latest BMG research poll for the iPaper, support for Rishi Sunak's party has tumbled to just 19%, compared to 42% for the opposition Labour Party. There are still 2 weeks to go in the UK's general election, so obituaries for the party of Winston Churchill and Margaret Thatcher are premature, but Andrew Neil, chairman of The Spectator, is offering one nonetheless.
One of the remarkable things of Brexit, whether you are for or against it, it's broken the Tory party. The Brexiteers won, the majority were Conservative, but getting it, doing it, living with it afterwards has broken them. It's exhausted them. It's taken away all their bandwidth. They had no time. And then, of course, the pandemic came along and that made it doubly difficult. But it's a bit like the Corn Laws in the 1840s. The repeal of the Corn Laws destroyed that Conservative Party as we knew it, and a new one had to rise from the ashes. Brexit has destroyed the Conservative Party as we've known it.
He spoke to Spectator TV. Nipping at the Conservatives' heels in the polls is Reform UK, the party now led by one of the principal architects of Brexit, Nigel Farage. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Our top story again, a full-scale war between Israel and Lebanon's Hezbollah must be averted. That's the warning from the United Nations Secretary-General, who is calling for an immediate de-escalation of tensions. Across the US East Coast, millions of Americans are experiencing extreme heat, with temperatures reaching the highest levels of the summer so far. Heat waves have also hit Europe, India and Saudi Arabia, where more than 1,000 people have died during the annual Hajj pilgrimage. That's the latest feature story news. I'm Benji Haya in Washington.
The latest episode of Free Talk Live continues with Hour 3 up next after the news here at listen.freetalklive.com. The latest episode of Free Talk Live continues with Hour 3 up next after the news here at listen.freetalklive.com.
Is it cheaper on eBay? You can find out in a flash. Literally. I'm Holland Cook with Inflation Hacks. Before you pay retail for new, eBay has a quick way to save big on new to you for the same item or something similar. Try this. This is very cool. As you shop, open the free eBay app on your smartphone, then tap the search bar. Look for the camera icon and point your phone at the item you're interested in and snap a photo. The app will search eBay and list look-alike items for sale. Now bear in mind, artificial intelligence is matching pictures, not exact items. So you'll want to read the specs and note the condition of the item, etc. But if you're looking for a book or DVD, you're better off searching the usual way by title. How are you coping? Post your inflation hacks on the blog at andyoucanquoteme.com.
Eleutheromania, the insatiable desire for freedom. It's the new 3-song heavy metal EP from Captain Kickass. Available now on your favorite music app or get it directly from CaptainKickass.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the latest episode of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network, LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Haya. A full-scale war between Israel and Lebanon's Hezbollah must be averted. That's the warning from United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres. He called for an immediate de-escalation of tensions. Jody Jacobs is at the UN headquarters in New York.
Antonio Guterres says Lebanon cannot become another Gaza. Addressing reporters here, he warned that the risk of another conflict in the Middle East is real and must be avoided.
One rash move, one miscalculation could trigger a catastrophe that goes far beyond the border and, frankly, beyond imagination.
This week, there's been increasing rhetoric from both Israel and the leader of Hezbollah in Lebanon, coupled with constant gunfire between the two countries. The leader of Hezbollah claims it will not stop its attacks unless there is a ceasefire in Gaza, while Israel's foreign minister this week warning of a potential all-out war.
Russian President Vladimir Putin claims Russia will further develop its nuclear arsenal to preserve the global balance of power, and he pledged to supply the Russian army fighting in Ukraine with the latest weaponry and drones. He urged South Korea not to arm Kiev following Moscow's new security pact with the DPRK. Daria Bondarchuk reports from Moscow.
Speaking in the Kremlin in front of graduates of military, police and intelligence service academies, Vladimir Putin said Russia needs to further develop its nuclear triad, a reference to its land-based, sea-based and air-launched nuclear missiles. At the same time, he said Russia remains open to security talks with the United States, but they must be comprehensive and must include the subject of Ukraine.
In the US, New York City and Washington, D.C. are experiencing extreme heat, with temperatures set to reach the highest level of the summer so far. It's prompted officials to swing into action as the hot weather becomes a serious safety concern. Mitch McCann's been braving the outdoors.
A heat wave can be more than just uncomfortable. It can be deadly and life-threatening if you're not prepared. That's according to New York Mayor Eric Adams as the city activates its cooling plan for the first time this year. Temperatures in New York will exceed 90 degrees Fahrenheit or 32 degrees Celsius, which follows a week of already intense heat for America's northeast. New York's heat emergency plan involves opening cooling centres for people seeking shelter from the sun, but also includes resources for New York's homeless community to stay safe. Meanwhile, in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., this weekend could see temperatures exceed 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 37 degrees Celsius. And if the heat does reach those numbers, it will be the first time since 2016. Across the United States, over 100 million Americans are under heat advisories, watches and warnings through the weekend.
Heat waves have also hit Europe, India and Saudi Arabia, where more than 1,000 people have died during the annual Hajj pilgrimage.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, what explains the collapse in support that opinion polls in the UK are indicating for the country's governing Conservative Party? In the latest BMG research poll for the iPaper, support for Rishi Sunak's party has tumbled to just 19%, compared to 42% for the opposition Labour Party. There are still 2 weeks to go in the UK's general election, so obituaries for the party of Winston Churchill and Margaret Thatcher are premature, but Andrew Neil, chairman of The Spectator, is offering one nonetheless.
One of the remarkable things of Brexit, whether you are for or against it, it's broken the Tory party. The Brexiteers won, the majority were Conservative, but getting it, doing it, living with it afterwards has broken them. It's exhausted them. It's taken away all their bandwidth. They had no time. And then, of course, the pandemic came along and that made it doubly difficult. But it's a bit like the Corn Laws in the 1840s. The repeal of the Corn Laws destroyed that Conservative Party as we knew it, and a new one had to rise from the ashes. Brexit has destroyed the Conservative Party as we've known it.
He spoke to Spectator TV. Nipping at the Conservatives' heels in the polls is Reform UK, the party now led by one of the principal architects of Brexit, Nigel Farage. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Our top story again, a full-scale war between Israel and Lebanon's Hezbollah must be averted. That's the warning from the United Nations Secretary-General, who is calling for an immediate de-escalation of tensions. Across the US East Coast, millions of Americans are experiencing extreme heat, with temperatures reaching the highest levels of the summer so far. Heat waves have also hit Europe, India and Saudi Arabia, where more than 1,000 people have died during the annual Hajj pilgrimage. That's the latest feature story news. I'm Benji Haya in Washington.
If you live in Williamsburg, chances are good you've seen them. Giant piles of beard hair rotting in the streets. Don't worry, it just means hipster molting season is here again. Experts say the husks of dead beards don't pose a threat to public safety and are just part of the natural life cycle of these strange organisms.
Once a year, all at the same time, every 20-something urban male sheds his ironic beard to make room for larger, more fanciful facial hair. They need the beards. They're a tough exoskeleton that protects these young people from the non-whimsical realities of life.
The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service says it's the largest molting season on record. In Brooklyn, sanitation crews are working overtime to clean up the loose whiskers the exuviating males have left behind. The affected youth's molting season comes right before their mating season, when the males use their lush beards to impress the local hordes of burlesque females.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live from the Porcupine Freedom Festival. I again almost gave out the number, but I caught myself before doing it. But hey, I still had to talk about something as we come back from break. So you can come down and hang out with us at RB46. We are recording here pretty much from noon to about 5 o'clock p.m. each day. I realize we should have some signs up saying, hey, we're recording at these times, come by. We should have some chairs out and stuff. But, like, we've had a rough few years at Free Talk Live with with like 3 of the people involved getting indicted and, Ian going to trial and then federal prison.
As of right this second, you're the only person that knows how to do this.
Also true. So I've been pretty distracted with moving into a new apartment and simultaneously moving out of said apartment and into a new house. Also reuniting with my dogs, working my job, trying to just get a handle on things that need to be done with Free Talk Live again.
Okay, just getting out of prison.
Yeah. And I'm going to talk about it today at 4 o'clock because it's surprisingly more stressful than I expected it to be.
Did your speech writing go well?
Yeah, it went fine. I already knew all of the stuff that I needed to say. The problem was, and I, did the outline, I did note cards and all of that, and then I left all of that in my apartment. So, yeah, obviously. As well as the missing episode of Free Talk Cast. Yes, I know there should have been an episode last Friday. There will be an episode this Friday. Bonnie and I are going to record it sometime in the near future, and that will be live as usual. That episode ended up on my desktop, which is completely air-gapped right now, which means it has no network connection to it, right? So it's also not on because, there's no one there.
It is a desktop. It's not a laptop, so it's not here.
Right. And I intended to copy the audio to a flash drive so I could edit it here when I arrived last Thursday night and put it online. But hey, guess what I forgot to do? Which is sad because it's a fantastic episode with Richie Rich and myself. Richie Rich, of course, does the Sunday night shows. And all we really talked about was how to interact with police officers. And because most people don't really know how to do that. So
I always forget he has a long history of activism, but it was in Hawaii where he's from.
Yeah. And he did it all by himself
Yeah.
for the most part in Hawaii. He didn't have the core group of, if you want to go cop blocking in
and
New Hampshire.
Activism.
Yeah. There's plenty of people who will join you.
Mm-hmm.
But in Hawaii, not so much. But we're joined now by Christopher Gronsky of DestinationFreedom.org, talking to us about how people can help get out of their tax obligations or their alleged tax obligations to the federal government. Now, this whole thing is...
That would be state as well. If you don't have a federal income tax liability, you wouldn't have a state income tax liability either.
Well, okay, I have questions about that then because I thought with your system you kind of claim state citizenship, so how do you not have state tax liability?
Because state income tax is based in the federal.
Okay.
So they tax federal citizens as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's convenient. But what catches me about all of this is that I saw this happen to Ian, and if you don't want to pay your taxes, all you have to do is not file your W-2. Really, that's it. The chances of the IRS even noticing that, much less coming after you, are 1 in millions. It's almost certainly not going. If you're just some McDonald's worker and you decide you don't want to pay your taxes,
don't do it.
Yeah.
But see that's.
But
let's see. Look,
well,
there's
let me
people
finish.
That are paying in.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Your employer is automatically taking out of your check anyway.
Well,
but the situation stands that you could, if you wanted to, just not pay your taxes and never get in trouble. The problem is, once you get on their radar, or you do this with a substantial amount of money, there's millions of people who have sold Bitcoin, and they didn't get indicted.
Mm-hmm.
It's once you reach a threshold of a certain amount of money and you get their attention, that's when they come after you. And I don't think that any of this stuff would protect anyone.
Well, that's not really what happens. That's how you see it, but that's not really. Those aren't the triggers. There's all kinds of different indicators. And yes, of course, if people don't file, it's much easier to not do anything. But the IRS doesn't just come after you willy-nilly. Okay, it's 3 years. If they haven't come after you and it's been 3 years since a year, they cannot come after you for past years. So
they did Ian Freeman.
I always thought it was 7.
No, if they deal
they found him guilty of 4 counts of tax evasion. So that's by definition more than 3 years.
No, if they can deal with a year indefinitely if they've dealt with it already. But 3 years is the amount of that. They can't go back further than that. And again,
I mean, I don't have the.
I'm just saying that's.
I don't
what,
have it pulled in front of me, but
that's how it is for that. So I don't.
It did literally just happen to Ian, though. So.
Well, I'd have to look and see what years they were talking about specifically, and if they were asking ahead of time. No one of our clients, no one's going to take a tax stand while being employed. So all of our clients work for themselves and do their own businesses, or if they are working for someone, then they end that or contract with the company if it's worth them working for. But paying in, because people don't realize this is a jurisdictional thing. So paying taxes is one thing, but Social Security is a tax as well. And so sometimes people just stop paying taxes, or they make that distinction and they're still paying in Social Security. So that's not a jurisdictional change. We're talking about completely. And so that's a different area with respect to IRS.
I think the perfect group of people to not file is people who it's not your W-2, is where you didn't pay them and you're going to get it taken away from you, like Young Americans for Liberty people. They door knock. I've gotten multiple of them to not file because they would just take money from them. They weren't like waiting for a tax return to get money back. And then also who aren't going to be like big political activists. Like if you don't think you're going to go do some big political activism and get a spotlight on you. I've gotten like multiple people to stop filing taxes in situations where they weren't waiting for a tax return.
Well, there's another thing of whether someone not files in there and they're subject to that jurisdiction in some capacity. Not filing is not the same as whether you have a tax liability or not. Because if you talk about a church, a 501c3 church, they're not paying taxes, but they're still in a status that if the IRS wanted to determine if they were governing themselves according to their non-tax status, they could certainly still audit them. So they're still in that jurisdiction, even though they're not paying taxes per se. So we're not talking about tax avoidance. We're talking about whether you have the liability or not. So again, paying taxes isn't the standard by which we're going. We're going by whether you're in that jurisdiction or not. That's how we look at it.
On the subject of 501c3s, I have never heard an attorney recommend someone to establish 501c3 status. Every attorney that I talked to, especially during the Crypto 6 case, when they asked me whether or not my church was 501c3, I would answer no. Like, oh, thank goodness, that's good. So I'm not sure there's any benefit. Plus, as Ian has pointed out repeatedly, requesting the government's permission to worship God is backwards.
I agree.
Right. You're supposed to be able to worship as you please, whether the government likes it or not. That's what the First Amendment actually entails.
So do we know whether Free State Project is a 501c3 of some sort?
It is. It's like something else, right?
Oh, I thought it was a 501c3.
Well, the C3 is like religious. It's something else.
Right. So my question is, they're
not
registered as a political activist group. I mean, a PAC, are they?
Not a PAC either, but there's something where they're registered with the government because people always bring it up. They're like, oh, if they do this, that actually goes against their
Well, that's what
rules.
I'm saying. They've been very political these days, having candidates actually come to these events.
Yeah,
and
but they can't endorse
I'm wondering
them.
if
That's what they say on Twitter.
I know they say that, except for are they getting all the Democrats here? Are they getting all the Republicans? They tend to. I mean, like when I was registering, they asked me to sign a petition to get the Libertarian Party, so they're advocating the Libertarian Party. So I'm thinking that's like crossing a line.
They do multiple things that actually put them in danger for this. Like there's some rules for their taking minutes and stuff like that. But then they'll go around it. They'll be like, hey, we didn't take minutes when we banned Alu because I just texted him and asked him not to be on, blah, blah, blah. But I don't really think they always go around it. I think they are breaking some rules. And really, we just don't need this ink. We don't need FSP Inc. at all. We don't need unelected bureaucrats of the Free State Project.
It didn't make sense to me years ago when we were here when it was starting, and I remember them going for the 501c3 or whatever the unit. And I said, like, it doesn't make sense. A freedom organization is going to file paperwork with. I mean, look, just do your thing. You don't have to create something. People get together and do their thing. I remember, the things that I've been part of. You just don't. There's no thing. And I remember getting a PO box at a post office. Say, "What's your thing?" I'm like, well, We drink a lot of beer. I wear the big hat, and I'm burnt sienna, so I can make all the big decisions because I'm this color crayon, and the other crayons are this and that. And do we have any statutes for color crayons? No. Okay, well then I'm sorry, that's what we're doing. But I mean, again, if you're going to term yourself the things that they want to tax, regulate, and control, then what hope do you have? I mean, why would you even go that way? Well, by the way, when the founding fathers had done the Declaration of Independence, what corporation did they form or put together? Look, they just did it. They just came together.
Well, they put together the United States government.
Not the Declaration of Independence. I'm not talking about the Constitution.
But I mean, generally, it was the same people who drafted and agreed to and signed on to the Constitution, I believe.
Not all of them. No,
not all of them.
There were anti-federalists who said we don't want this.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to read the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists and see those arguments pro and con about what. I mean, we look at where we are. The Anti-Federalists were right.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah, and it's amazing. I was down in Faneuil Hall, and which is a national park, and I said they had the Federalist Papers. I said, well, where are the Anti-Federalist papers? They do not sell the Anti-Federalist papers. These are historical documents. It's like, really? Oh yeah, because we're the federal government. We can't.
Well,
it's like that's crazy.
The politically correct thing to do on both sides now, ever since Lincoln, is to be an anti-federalist, which is crazy. Lincoln was an extreme Hamiltonian, and he made it to where it's like sacrilegious to be anything but an anti-federalist. But I just looked
Federalist. He was a Federalist.
A Federalist. My bad.
I'm an anti-Federalist.
Right,
Yeah,
me too. Jeffersonian.
I prefer smaller governments.
I looked it up
Decentralized.
and Free State Project is 501c3. I don't know why I thought that was only religious and there was something else, but I know they're not a PAC, and that's why they can't promote specific people running for candidates. The other day they posted on Twitter, they said there are many Free Staters running for office. We can't tell you who because we're not allowed to promote specific candidates, but we can tell you that there are a lot of them, something like that.
See, that's why you don't bend your knees to the government, right? As soon as you do, as soon as they got that paperwork, the people involved in the Free State Project gave up their rights, their right to free speech, their right to use their platform to promote candidates of their choosing. They neutered themselves.
See, exactly. Because look, if they just do your thing, people will keep their word, whatever the deal is. And so, and then, like you're saying, they have all the free speech protections because it's just them.
Yep.
Again, but you know what? It's the almighty dollar. We want the federal dollars, and so this is what we're willing to do. That's sad.
They could still have their board, though. They could still have everything they have
whatever
now.
You want.
Yeah.
Well, they wouldn't get big people donating to them. So I bet that's what it is.
Well, because they want tax write-offs.
Right.
That's part of it, and that's sad. And
also
we're talking about Free State Project, but this is every church.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
So we're actually moving towards unplugging churches, whole churches, not only eliminating their income tax liability, but also eliminating all of their credit card debt and all that. So we're dealing with all the debt discharge as well.
Wow,
as,
I didn't know you did debt discharging.
As well as the eliminating their income tax liability.
I love that because this is one of the primary reasons that the Reformed Satanic Church even exists. Now, the Church of Satan is it's anti-church for the most part, but they filed for 501c3 status in order to be tax exempt, and then they made a big show of being, quote, proud to pay their taxes, right? Because they for some reason they're really butthurt about Christian churches and other churches not having to pay taxes.
Wow.
Whereas I'm looking at this from the correct, and yes,
like satanic.
It's the correct satanic perspective of you should not be giving your money to people who are going to use it to kill other people and to oppress other people and destroy their rights. You should be tax exempt across the board. You guys should be proudly tax exempt and urging other churches to do it. Don't proudly pay your taxes. Proudly not have to pay your taxes. I would say proudly just not pay your taxes, but I'm on U.S. probation right now. It's probably not a great idea to say that.
But the thing about it is that all of these entities and the people who are doing these 501c3s, they all believe that they are located in the United States, District of Columbia. So if they realize that they weren't in these jurisdictions, they wouldn't have to fill out this paperwork. But again, they don't read tax code. They don't read the definitions in the tax code of what they're talking about. The income tax is for those that are in the District of Columbia, that would be resident aliens and federal citizens. So if you're neither of those, you don't even have to do these exemptions. I mean, it's like, did you get the exemption in, in Italy or in Germany?
No, of course not.
No, because you're not German, you're not in Germany. So why would we want to go and get the tax status from the District of Columbia? Why do they want to do that? They all want to get in the District of Columbia so that they can be regulated. It doesn't make sense.
The Free State Project should have to take away the word free, because that should be for free churches like the Shire Free Church. That's what that means. It's not like just a name.
Right. And the Shire Free Church never sought 501c3 status.
Yeah, never.
Right.
And but it's an actual church, and you can actually do community service. Like if you're in Keene or Cheshire County, presumably all of New Hampshire, I'm not entirely sure though, but if you're in Cheshire County and you're sentenced to community service, you can in fact do that community service with the Shire Free Church. Like they're authorized to give you assignments and to do all of that stuff like it's an actual real church.
And we consider outreach like cop blocking to be tax. We've written people off for that.
Yeah, it's community service. You are serving the community.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's the correct thing I would expect from a church. Instead, you end up with a lot of churches, especially throughout the United States and in the South particularly, that are just all pro-police, pro-Trump, pro-oppression, pro-Blue Lives Matter. Is like, did you guys not read this book your dude wrote?
It's so un-American. So many people that are like, yeah, pro-America. They're the least American that I can't describe them as any less American. It's like being for the redcoats in 2024 when you're pro-cops.
Well, see, a lot of people think America's a country, too. I mean, people don't think Europe's a country. America's a confederation of states.
Right.
America's a union. And, someone was on my Facebook page and they had this, tractor trailer full of flags for Flag Day, and they had flags all over. The flag. It was definitely flag worship, and so they're making like it's proud. I'm like, and so I wrote in this like, do you think the Europeans are as excited about their union as we are excited about ours?
I've never even seen the
It's
European Union flag.
I'm waiting for them to, the European Union would probably get together and go like, those Americans got something going with their union. We should have the European Union Day and put the European Union in front of all of our stadiums and all that stuff and sing, "Oh, Union of Europe" and all that, just to have their song and all that stuff.
It's crazy how many
crazy.
It's crazy how many Americans also don't understand that, or how many people who are in North America, rather.
Yeah.
Because one of my last times on the Quora website, before they went monetized and it just became this nightmarish hellscape of liberals who all they do is monetize their content pointlessly, that defeats the entire purpose of Quora. But anyway, there was this Californian. I had answered a question about secession and how I was obviously pro-secession, and she pointed out that these states aren't republics. They don't have any government in order to do this. And I was like, Republic of California is literally on your state flag, girl.
Wow.
Your state is literally a republic right now. Right. That wouldn't change with secession. Right now, you're living in the Republic of California.
This is all because of Lincoln. Like, ever since Lincoln, he started all the indoctrination to make people forget what we're exactly talking about, that there is such thing as people who were like, hey, with this new government system we want to do, I don't want there to be a federal government. And then there's other people saying, well, we think there should be a strong federal government, and that it's not just one or the other. It's not just like from the beginning. It was always supposed to be a union.
Again, if like Malcolm X says, why would you let your enemy educate your children? I mean, Americans are pretty ignorant of what they have. And that's the other thing too, is, so no one has the right to associate. That's a privilege.
It is.
If you're going to be with somebody, they got to agree to be with you. We get restraining orders on people who want to be with people that don't want to be with them. And so the idea is that you have to get permission to come into the union, because you have to get the agreement of the other states if they want you to be with them. But anyone can leave, like Britain left the European Union. anyone can leave the Union by choice. And of course, it would be a collective vote in that regard.
Sure.
But it doesn't have to be bloodshed for leaving the Union. The opening of the Declaration of Independence says that when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them to the other, and assume that among the powers of the powers, I forget the word there,
People?
but to be free, and independent. And so that's your right, is to disassociate. And that's what many people don't feel. You can disassociate with anyone you want. That's why exile is a much better way to punish, is to say, hey, I don't want to be with you. Not that you do anything with somebody, but they can say, we don't want to be with you because
Instead of putting them in a cage, like
no,
barbarians.
exactly.
Well,
And
the
so-
USSR loved exile. And like me personally, I would have taken exile over imprisonment because then I could have taken my cats.
Well,
right?
exactly. But that's
wherever you
that's a more peaceful thing. But again, people don't realize what power they have and what they do. So we still promote that America is a country instead of it's a union. It's a confederation of states. These are states, and I want to make America states again.
Very well put. I agree entirely. I would love to see Americans understand that these states that we have, this national government that we have, it's supposed to be about on par with the one in the European Union. And I would like to warn the people in the European Union, you see this behemoth that we have now called the United States government? That's you in 200 years. That European Union government will continue to grow and federalize and become more centralized and stronger until everyone forgets that Italy and Germany used to be independent states.
That's a great word.
Crazy.
That's
what
a
I
great
was
word.
about to say.
So if you watch the YouTube film called Brexit, and they go into great detail the corruption in the European Union, like how many regulations are on a pillow and all that stuff. And when I saw that, it was like, well, our government is the European Union on steroids. And the difference is we have a freaking military in which we murder people around the planet. That's the difference. Because look, how happier would we be if Europe defended itself and actually, but they know they don't want to empower their European Union with the force that they have in their states. They recognize it because they've been there before. Americans, not so bright, because there's cash associated with that. The military-industrial complex.
And indoctrination with all the movies and everything, like, oh, your country, you need to die for your country and be really proud of your country. Really, I think of America as, well, obviously a collection of states, but also just like the culture of the people and the people. And I used to, when I first became a libertarian, I got kind of like upset and I was like, well, now I hate America. I'm not American. And now I'm back to the beginning where I love being American and I care a lot about it. I'm like learning a lot about history recently, but I am not a unionist.
And I would say you people out there who are displaying your American flag going, what about this flag for Pride Month? Man, stop being a snowflake. But thank you so much for joining us today, Christopher. You can find out more at destinationfreedom.org. Again, that's destinationfreedom.org. There's more coming up here from the Porcupine Freedom Festival. It is Free Talk Live.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Haya. A full-scale war between Israel and Lebanon's Hezbollah must be averted. That's the warning from United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres. He called for an immediate de-escalation of tensions. Jody Jacobs is at the UN headquarters in New York.
Antonio Guterres says Lebanon cannot become another Gaza. Addressing reporters here, he warned that the risk of another conflict in the Middle East is real and must be avoided.
One rash move, one miscalculation could trigger a catastrophe that goes far beyond the border and frankly, beyond imagination.
This week, there's been increasing rhetoric from both Israel and the leader of Hezbollah in Lebanon, coupled with constant gunfire between the two countries. The leader of Hezbollah claims it will not stop its attacks unless there is a ceasefire in Gaza, while Israel's foreign minister this week warning of a potential all-out war.
Russian President Vladimir Putin claims Russia will further develop its nuclear arsenal to preserve the global balance of power, and he pledged to supply the Russian army fighting in Ukraine with the latest weaponry and drones. He urged South Korea not to arm Kiev following Moscow's new security pact with the DPRK. Daria Bondarchuk reports from Moscow.
Speaking in the Kremlin in front of graduates of military police and intelligence service academies, Vladimir Putin said Russia needs to further develop its nuclear triad, a reference to its land-based, sea-based and air-launched nuclear missiles. At the same time, he said Russia remains open to security talks with the United States, but they must be comprehensive and must include the subject of Ukraine.
In the US, New York City and Washington, D.C. are experiencing extreme heat, with temperatures set to reach the highest level of the summer so far. It's prompted officials to swing into action as the hot weather becomes a serious safety concern. Mitch McCann's been braving the outdoors.
A heat wave can be more than just uncomfortable. It can be deadly and life-threatening if you're not prepared. That's according to New York Mayor Eric Adams as the city activates its cooling plan for the first time this year. Temperatures in New York will exceed 90 degrees Fahrenheit or 32 degrees Celsius, which follows a week of already intense heat for America's northeast. New York's heat emergency plan involves opening cooling centres for people seeking shelter from the sun, but also includes resources for New York's homeless community to stay safe. Meanwhile, in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., this weekend could see temperatures exceed 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 37 degrees Celsius. And if the heat does reach those numbers, it will be the first time since 2016. Across the United States, over 100 million Americans are under heat advisories, watches and warnings through the weekend.
Heat waves have also hit Europe, India and Saudi Arabia, where more than 1,000 people have died during the annual Hajj pilgrimage.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live here on site at the Porcupine Freedom Festival, and the heat has finally broken, like fully.
Suddenly.
Yeah, and it's quite refreshing. It's very windy. It's a bit rainy and a bit thundery, and you will probably hear some of that here. And there's not a whole lot we can do about that. We're on site. We're doing a show, so there's going to be background noise. So
meteorology is just wrong, because like earlier in this show, you'll hear me saying to Arya, like, "Oh, it's not supposed to thunder today anymore."
Yep.
I see it and I hear it.
And it wasn't supposed to rain until tomorrow. Today was supposed to be sunny and 95-ish degrees, but right now it feels amazing, and that wind is extraordinarily welcome. So
it's almost like cold. Like I went and got my blanket.
Yeah, the rain is cold. I expected the rain to be a little bit more refreshing than it is. Instead, you step out there and you get rained on, and it's just cold. I did pull down some of the sides here so that we're not getting rained on, but it seems that now the wind has changed directions. So, of course, I'm getting rained on again. But that's what happens here at the Porcupine Freedom Festival. As long as the electronic equipment is safe, I will be okay. I have to change clothes for my speech anyway because I'm not giving a speech wearing this. But it was 94 degrees earlier.
She's naked for the listeners.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, what are you going to do? Like yesterday, I took my top off here, and today felt even hotter than yesterday. So, last night we tried to have a strip poker game here at the Free Talk Live site. Unfortunately, I was the only one willing to actually play from what we could tell.
Well, I was willing to play but not strip.
Yeah, fair enough. There seemed to be considerable amounts of interest in it. But to be fair, like, and no disrespect meant to anyone here, but I do not want to see the vast majority of you without clothes on.
Yeah, I won't say who, but one guy, older guy, was like, "No way! Who wants to see a 65-year-old man naked?" And
yeah,
he was just like, somebody else was saying to him, like, "Don't be self-conscious." He's like, "It's not that I'm self-conscious. It's just that nobody wants to see that. I'm not going to force it on them." I was like, He's probably right.
I mean,
He's right.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
There were a few such dudes running around without shirts on yesterday, and like I understand it's hot, but like put some care into your body, I guess, right? Like do some sit-ups.
Violation
now
of the nap. To walk around with boobs as a man.
Yeah, I don't. It feels somewhat like a nap violation, certainly, and it's certainly something I would rather not see. But, you know, not everyone is beautiful, and the human body simply is the human body.
I'm joking about being a nap violation, but stinking is a nap violation.
What is it?
Stinking?
Oh, stinking. Yeah, I
Going
can
in
sort
someone's
of see
house
that.
stinking?
Well, you're sort of forcing them to
be uncomfortable
and engage with air molecules and scent molecules that are coming off of your body.
Mhm.
And, like, I could see there's no consent in that relationship.
Maybe it's a nap violation as soon as somebody tells you to stop stinking, you know?
Okay, fair enough, yeah.
Until then, for all you know, they like it.
Libertarianism does have sort of a overlap with hippies in that regard. There are a shocking number of libertarians who don't seem to shower regularly and who don't wear deodorant.
This is the thing. There's like this whole school of thought that not wearing deodorant actually like is better for you and you don't stink as much, but that's fine and dandy for the people who eat right. But the people who don't eat right, they stink.
That makes sense. And a lot of the libertarians don't eat right. They're engaging in the keto diet, so all they eat is meat and potatoes or whatever.
I
and
think keto's bad too.
Yeah, I agree. I would rather when I first went vegetarian a few years ago, everyone I knew just about said, "Don't do that. Just do a carnivore diet instead." I'm like, no, that's the opposite direction. I want to be healthy with
carnivore's not
vitamins
good.
and minerals, not protein. I mean, protein's good too, and you got to have protein. But that's what you get here, and I'm shocked by the number of libertarians who don't. What is their issue with shoes?
Oh, well, they're trying to ground. The thing is, though, like, walking around on pavement isn't the same as grounding, and your feet will be disgusting. Just whenever you're in a grassy spot, slip off your shoes and sit there and ground for a while. It really doesn't take all day.
Yeah, and then your feet don't look like a hobbit's.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I think of when I see some of these people's feet, because they're almost black at this point. I'm like, you look like Frodo.
Because walking on asphalt isn't grounding, and, well, maybe it is literally, like, negative ions, whatever. But it's not, like, natural and good for you. You're getting car toxins all over your feet.
Also a valid point. So that's the reason they do it, because they consider themselves to be grounding?
That's what most people say. Like, apparently around the fire last year, I wasn't here for this, there's a guy that we all know, and he's nice and funny and never aggressive or anything, but he was, like, drunk, and he was telling people, like, everyone, take off your shoes. Why are you all wearing shoes? And he wouldn't drop it because he was just, like, drunk, and he's like, it's good for you. Take off your shoes. And everybody's like, dude, I don't want to. It's just so funny.
Personally, I prefer flip-flops. Boy, it is really raining here. Sorry if that's coming in over the background.
I love flip-flops, too, because it's like you can easily take them off when you're in a grassy, nice spot, and I'm doing it right now while I'm sitting here. But you can put it back on when you need to walk on something rocky or...
I just hate shoes, honestly, and I hate socks. I hate having my feet covered, and flip-flops strike a good balance with that.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily, I was able to get flip-flops while in prison. I inherited 2 different pairs. The first one ended up breaking, but I inherited a second pair that it actually fit better anyway.
Were they like the shower flip-flops only?
No, they got... No. There are clogs that they sell that they call shower shoes, and that's what most people use, but... These were legacy, and they had come from other facilities. One, like, if you transfer there, you get to take your property, and if it's authorized at a county jail, they're generally going to authorize you to have it at the BOP. Not always, but usually.
They sent me Ian's, well, no, they sent me in the mail Ian's tennis shoes from county jail.
Did they send you his tablet?
No.
Weird. Well, who knows why these people do what they do.
Yeah.
But that's how a lot of these flip-flops got into federal prison. And to be honest, I'm happy about it because I'd so much rather wear flip-flops. Despite being here in New Hampshire, I would wear flip-flops during the winter. I do it when there's snow on the ground.
Whoa.
Just because I prefer flip-flops.
I'm not that anti-shoe, and actually in the winter I get in this, like, seasonal time period where I like socks. But right now, the idea of wearing a sock is, like, disgusting.
Yeah, and it's very hot today. Yeah. Even now it's still a little bit muggy, but I mean, it's comfortable, it's much better. But there's someone sorely missing. There's multiple someones, well, there's 2 sorely missing from the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Obviously, Ian Freeman. But there's another person who you would think, after being targeted to the extent they have been by the government, they might be a little bit more friendly towards liberty, especially considering
Trump. No, I'm just kidding.
They began their career relatively friendly toward liberty. Alex Jones is the person I'm referring to, and he once did a lot of really good work. The Obama Deception is a fantastic documentary.
Never seen it.
And there are a few others whose names I have forgotten that I would definitely recommend. His documentaries from the 2010 to 2015 era probably were on point. They weren't filled with Trump nonsense, but then Trump came around and Alex Jones became a statist. And that has done him no benefits whatsoever. It's the same sort of thing that happened to Chris Cantwell, except he went a little bit further and it wasn't really Donald Trump's fault. But falling in love with the state and authoritarianism did not do any of these individuals any good. Alex Jones still got prosecuted. He seems to be losing everything. I haven't heard anything about what's going on with him, but you have a story about him. So fill us in. What is happening in this maniac's world? By the way, Alex Jones, I would absolutely have you on Free Talk Live.
Yeah, we were both GCN.
Yep. I don't think we'd let you host the show, but you can absolutely be on with us.
So this is from AP, and I think he is basically going to lose everything. It says, Alex Jones's personal assets to be sold to pay $1.5 billion Sandy Hook debt. Company bankruptcy is dismissed. So, a federal judge on Friday ordered the liquidation of conspiracy theorist Alex Jones' personal assets. The federal government is a conspiracy theorist. You can actually call the federal government, or at least the prosecution and Ian in your case, conspiracy theorists. They had a theory that you guys conspired together. That's all that means.
Yeah.
So stupid.
Point.
It's such a stupid term the way it's used nowadays.
Well, conspiracy theorist is mostly used to bash alternative ideas.
Yeah.
Like you say something that people don't want to hear, and they go, oh, that's just a conspiracy theory. And that's their way of discarding it. Criminal has the same sort of implications. Once you call someone a criminal, you stop seeing them as a human being. And the same sort of thing happens with Nazi. We see that a lot. And conspiracy theorist.
Everything they believe must be bad because they're a felon or whatever.
Yeah, it's tragic.
So it says the judge ordered the liquidation of conspiracy theorist Alex Jones's personal assets, but he also dismissed Alex's company's separate bankruptcy case, leaving the immediate future of his InfoWars media platform uncertain, as he owes $1.5 billion for his false claims that the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting was a hoax. And it's just like, you just write false claims. It's like, maybe that is the case, but like, you're the media. You weren't there. You're supposed to. It's just so stupid. We don't have like a media that thinks for itself. It's just like, it's peddling the idea that you're supposed to think. It's forcing you.
I think Alex Jones was probably wrong about Sandy Hook, but I don't know. And I don't understand how it can become, you said something that was wrong, therefore you have to pay $1.5 billion.
Also, he really didn't say it. He didn't say the Sandy Hook shooting was a hoax. He had people on and interviewed them. He was asking questions. That's the craziest part about all of this. You're not allowed to ask questions.
Yeah, but the way they ask questions, and South Park did a really good take on this with Eric Cartman basically being Alex Jones. And I received a couple of Alex Jones books when I was in prison. And I learned very quickly that the best way to enjoy these books was, in fact, to read them in Eric Cartman's voice. And they would say some bizarre things. Like, there's one of these guys, I think he's a senator or something, who writes weird pornographic books about men ending up, or women ending up being the sex slaves of extraterrestrials.
Ew.
Right, yeah, it's a weird thing to write about, but hey, whatever.
Well, Kurt Vonnegut did it.
Yeah, people have their kinks, man. I'm not going to knock it. It's not for me, but whatever makes you happy. And Alex Jones took this and says, I'm not saying there's a conspiracy to turn all of human beings into sex slaves for extraterrestrials, but it certainly raises the question, doesn't it? I'm just asking the question. Why is he interested in betraying his own species to extraterrestrials? And that's what he means when he says he's just asking the question. It's an extremely loaded question.
Then Mark Edge should be in jail. That's how he says things.
It is, yeah. I'm not a fan of it, right? Like, if you're going to ask a question genuinely, then just ask the question. But the way that Alex Jones does it, it's more of an accusation. And then he's like, are you guilty of this very weird thing that I've accused you of being guilty of? I'm just asking the question. And it makes the person look and sound guilty.
It's still not the same thing as like false claims.
True. And even if he did make false claims, as long as he believed they were true, I don't see an issue with
exactly. I also believe the same thing. I believe that you should be able to make false claims and not believe it. You should be able to make false claims and know you're lying and not get thrown in jail for speech. It's not.
Except you could damage someone's reputation wrongly by doing so. So I could sort of understand that from a libel standpoint.
But I'm not talking about a person. I'm talking about like, this wasn't a real situation. This was faked. It's not like calling some person out. The government's not a person.
That's true.
If he's saying it was the government, I don't even know if he was saying it was the government.
I think it was the victims' families that ended up suing him, and they made the argument that he was basically saying that
hurt their feelings.
Well, yeah, that the children who died were lying and engaging in this hoax because they're like, look, our children are really dead, and this guy's saying it didn't happen, so he's effectively saying our children are liars.
I don't know if that was the legal argument, though, because I heard that it was that, and this has been a while since I looked into this specific part, but I think that it was, their argument was, well, it caused us emotional damage, and these are our emotional damages. It wasn't like a libel thing.
But you should be allowed to be wrong. And this criminalization of being wrong, I think, is going to bite Americans in the rear at some point. It's already looked down upon to be wrong. This is why people don't admit when they are wrong, because we've equated intelligence with correctness. And we assume that if you're wrong about something, you must therefore be unintelligent. Think about anything someone has said to you that you think otherwise. You don't tell them they're wrong. You tell them you're stupid. And that's the incorrect way to go about this. And further making it impossible for people to admit when they're wrong by throwing $1.5 billion lawsuits at them is not the way to go. We should allow people to be wrong, and that's just all there is to it.
It says, Judge Christopher Lopez approved converting Jones's proposed personal bankruptcy reorganization to a liquidation. But Lopez threw out the case of his company, Austin, Texas-based Free Speech Systems, after failed attempts by Jones to reach an agreement with Sandy Hook families on his proposals to reorganize and keep operating the company while paying them millions of dollars.
Yeah, let's be honest here as well, that this was about sinking Alex Jones and putting him out of business. $1.5 billion? Come on,
Even if
guys.
your feelings were hurt, like worse than anyone else's feelings have ever been hurt in the history of all time, why does Alex Jones owe you millions of dollars for it?
Yeah, he absolutely shouldn't.
There are people that hurt my feelings about my husband being in jail all the time.
Even $100,000 per quote-unquote victim would have been excessive. But this has to be tens of millions of dollars per victim in order to reach $1.5 billion. Alex Jones doesn't have that kind of money.
Who does?
Right.
Well, maybe like the Tesla guy?
Yeah, Elon Musk could pay it, probably.
It says it wasn't immediately clear what will happen in the coming weeks to Free Speech Systems, InfoWars' parent company, which Jones built into a multi-million-dollar moneymaker over the past 25 years by selling dietary supplements and other products. But both Jones and lawyers...
That reminds me of, like, back when I was doing the Call to
Man
Freedom.
Max or something.
We had a caller call in doing an Alex Jones impression, and he did a really good impression. He broke character once, but it was otherwise a really good impression. And he suggested that I go to Infowars.com and buy some Super Shemale Vitality. Because that's the kind of nonsense.
That's what it is.
Yeah, that's the kind of nonsense that Alex Jones has been selling for years, and apparently people are buying it.
I was calling it Man Max, but I think it is Super Male Vitality.
Oh, that's a real thing they have, Super Male Vitality?
Something close to that, if not. But yeah, that's hilarious. It's like,
and people buy it for some reason.
Because Alex Jones is like built like a big giant linebacker, and he's like, my kids aren't going to go hungry. I will eat my neighbors. You think I like sizing up my neighbors and thinking about what cuts I'm going to make? My kids aren't going hungry. I will eat your leftist ass.
Did he really say that?
Yeah.
That sounds like him in a video. Oh, good Lord. He's an entertainer, man.
Yeah.
And like that's what people lose sight of when they start believing in him too much. He seems to have sort of become the character that he had created, which is fine because he did a lot of good work in the process with the Obama deception and others that I can't remember the names of, but he's gone off the deep end at this point. But he's still an entertainer, and that is entertaining. I think he got banned from Facebook a number of years ago, and I was against that. Someone pointed out, if you've ever seen the show Space Ghost Coast to Coast,
Yeah.
they needed to take Alex Jones clips and allow him on Facebook as parts of Space Ghost Coast to Coast. Because some of the ones I saw would just have him saying just completely unhinged things. Like how if he thought it would prevent World War III, he would suck a golf ball through a garden hose and other just bizarre stuff that you wouldn't expect someone to say off the cuff like that. And meanwhile, the little bird guy's just over there just blinking and shocked, doesn't know what to say. And it was very entertaining. That's the way Alex Jones should have been allowed on there. Or as a South Park character. Any of those things would have been fitting for
Isn't
Alex
he a praying
Jones.
mantis, not a bird? Or was the praying mantis
Oh,
some
he
other
is.
guy?
He is a praying mantis. You are correct. I've only seen bits and pieces of it. It was never one of the shows that I watched a lot, even as I did watch a lot.
I think his name is Zorak.
Yeah.
So funny.
I wouldn't have any idea what his name was.
It says both Jones and lawyers for the Sandy Hook families said they expect InfoWars to cease operating at some point because of the huge debt. That's just terrible. This man's whole entire business is being shut down. That hurts way more families than Alex Jones' words hurt the feelings of the families of the Sandy Hook people.
Alex Jones certainly does have a lot of employees.
Right.
And those people are going to be hurt by this, not to mention the millions of people who listen to Alex Jones. Now, it's true that we are beating Alex Jones on national radio. However, he's killing us online. Probably not so much anymore, given that his studio is effectively government property now. But he has a lot of listeners. A lot of people pay attention to Alex Jones. This hurts their First Amendment rights to engage with the press that they want to listen to.
And run a business?
Yeah.
It's so hard right now to even find clips of Alex Jones. Like, if you want to go find I'll Eat Your Leftist Ass, you're not going to find it easily on YouTube.
Which isn't surprising. I'm sure it's on Odyssey, though, and Library.
yeah.
Library, of course, is a decentralized platform that allows people to share forms of content with one another. A lot of it is video content, but they do have songs and audiobooks. You can get the PDFs to 3D print some guns on there as well. There's a lot of good stuff on there beyond music, beyond videos, but it is primarily, it seems to be a video platform. But I absolutely love Library. I've been supporting it, I believe, since 2016. And I love Odyssey, not quite as much because it's a little more decentralized. But of course, Library was taken to task by the SEC a few years ago. And something very similar happened with them.
It was. Jeremy Kaufman's business was torn apart and destroyed just because of a vendetta of a government employee as well.
Disgorged was the word that they used to describe what they were, which sounds vicious and horrifying.
Like a bird killing a live mammal or something.
Yeah.
They're the guts.
It sounds like something I would not want to witness.
I had never heard that word before, disgorgement. I was like, that's what they call it. They're like, okay, now we're going to engage in some disgorgement.
Now, I believe Library still exists and is still functioning and is still going to continue on into the future. I haven't actually checked since I've been outside of prison.
I use Odyssey every day because I liked putting my videos in the background while I do other things on other apps, and I like that I can get all these people who can't get censored on YouTube. I use it every day.
Odyssey is fantastic. It's just it's not quite as decentralized, and that's the only issue I have with it. So there is a little more control over what you can and can't put on their platform. That said, it's a really loose sort of thing. And the reason Odyssey still exists is that Library wisely separated the two companies a few years ago. So the platform Odyssey didn't actually have anything to do with Library credits. Yeah.
Right? It's not a website?
I think it's a Library?
No, sorry, Odyssey.
Odyssey is also a website, odyssey.com. That's ODYSEE.com, I believe.
That's important to say.
Yeah, it's spelled weirdly, but, you can find it if you look for it.
At this point, like, whenever I go to spell Odyssey as in a trip or something, I'm spelling it wrong, like the app.
They do a lot of really good work over there. And, of course, when we did the She Talk Live episode Topless, it was broadcast only to our Odyssey platform, where I expected some amount of issues, and there kind of were.
Just the thumbnail.
Yeah, and in that they were like, hey, guys, you can't have this nudity as part of your thumbnail.
Well, I think they asked, to be fair.
They did also ask, yeah. But as far as the content itself, they did not object to it. They had no issue with it, and we're allowed to do it anytime we want, which is a lot more than you could say about YouTube, who kicked us off a few weeks ago without any warning or notice whatsoever.
Permanently?
No, for like a week.
Okay.
I just happened to notice that we weren't streaming onto YouTube because
somebody asked me about it yesterday and I didn't know.
We should be back on YouTube, but I'm not 100% sure because I haven't checked lately. But we had a 7-day strike, and I couldn't even find what video we received this strike over. All it said was, you have received a strike for violating community guidelines. It will go away in 7 days or whatever, because we're back down to our first strike, for whatever that is worth. But ultimately, we're being censored, and this really escalated during COVID-19 when we questioned the official narrative. And apparently, we did that rightly, because now everyone has sort of accepted. A lot of these people who I know were freaking out about COVID-19 and who got the vaccines, like 3 or 4 doses of it, the boosters and all of that crap, they're willingly admitting, yeah, it seems like it was a big nothing burger. We freaked out over nothing. Well, how about an apologize to the people whose rights you demolished in your fear?
Lives were like just stopped in their tracks. Like I didn't get to go to college in person. I was just doing this online thing, and I was like, wait, I could just watch YouTube videos and quit.
Yep. People died alone in hospital rooms because of other people's fear of COVID-19.
Having to give birth alone without
Wearing masks
husband.
while giving birth. Absolutely horrific behavior from one human being to another, and something that we're going to have to reckon with at some point. That's a large amount of darkness still within the human soul that just happened just a few years ago, and we're pretending like it didn't. But they did tell you, no, you can't go to work. No, you can't hang out with your friends. You can't you can't be there when your grandmother dies. They told people that, and they forced people to endure it. They sent old people to nursing homes to allow them to die. It was absolutely horrific. A new level of barbarism.
People will come to a reckoning of the consequences of this, but unfortunately they won't know. There will be the lower IQ generation of kids who had to grow up wearing masks, but people don't understand what cause and effect is anymore. I'd say it all the time. They're not going to be like, why is this happening to our kids?
I was just saying 30 seconds. I didn't mean you had to stop immediately. Sorry. But the music bed is starting. And we're not hearing it right now because I'm waiting on a speaker to arrive, which should actually be here right about now. But I have to go do a speech at the pavilion. Come down and see it. Well, never mind. It's already happened by the time you're listening to this. But we're still here tomorrow. So come hang out with us at RV46. It is Free Talk Live.
Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 13th through the 16th for the 8th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which has sold out in recent years. Fork Fest happens the weekend before the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with